I'm Stephen Koprince, Managing Partner of Koprince Law, LLC. And today I want to talk about an important overhaul of the VA's regulations for SDVOSBs and VOSBs. The VA is proposing to overhaul its SDVOSB and VOSB program regulations, including, importantly, the ownership and control requirements. In November 2015, the VA released a proposed rule in which it seeks to find what it calls an appropriate balance between preventing fraud in its Veterans First Contracting Program and providing a process that would make it easier for more SDVOSBs and VOSBs to become verified. Now, the VA's proposal may not be perfect and it's unlikely to satisfy everyone. In my mind, though, it's a step in the right direction, with one important caveat that I'll get to in a few moments. The VA's proposal attempts to strike a better balance between ensuring that SDVOSBs and VOSBs are owned and controlled by veterans on the one hand, while on the other, tacitly acknowledging that overly stringent, unconditional ownership and control provisions can discourage minority investment and participation in these businesses. To that end, the VA proposes to amend its ownership regulation, which currently requires the veteran to unconditionally own his or her own interest. Now, this requirement has come under fire because the VA previously interpreted it to mean that no restrictions on the veteran's ownership interest whatsoever were permissible, including commonplace restrictions like a so-called right of first refusal provision. A right of first refusal provision is one in which business partners agree to offer to sell their interest to their partner first before offering them to a third party in the event they wish to quit the business. The VA backed off its unconditional ownership stance unofficially following a 2013 court decision. But the rules have not changed officially, and so the new policy that was implemented in 2013 would be codified in the VA's proposed rule. Under its proposed new rule, the VA would allow what it calls commercially reasonable restrictions on a veteran's ownership, and those commercially reasonable restrictions would be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. The VA has also proposed to change its control regulation. Like the ownership regulation, the VA proposes to dial back on its current insistence that the veteran unconditionally control each and every aspect of the business. Under current law, for example, the VA has held that the veteran must have the right to dissolve the company entirely if he or she wants, even over the objections of a non-veteran minority owner. In its proposed rule, the VA would temper this approach by allowing non-veteran minority owners to have essentially veto power over what the VA calls extraordinary business decisions. An extraordinary business decision would include something like dissolving the company, adding a new owner to the company, or selling all or substantially all of the company's assets. Altogether, I think these proposed changes are a positive step. Veterans and veterans advocates have complained for many years that the current regulations unnecessarily discourage minority investment in SDVOSBs and VOSBs, and that is to the ultimate detriment of veterans. My biggest concern with the VA's proposal is not with the new rules themselves, but the fact that these new changes, if they become law, and they are just a proposal right now, but if they become law, these changes would not necessarily comport with the SBA's own SDVOSB regulations. In that regard, keep in mind that the government currently runs two separate SDVOSB programs. There's the VA's verification program, which is what I've been talking about here. But that program applies only to VA and FAA contracts. The SBA runs a separate self-certification SDVOSB program, which applies to SDVOSB set-asides issued by most other agencies, including the DoD. While the SBA's regulations are less well-developed than the VA's, the SBA's administrative judges have signaled that the unconditional ownership and control requirements under the SBA's program are going to be strictly interpreted. That means that unless the SBA changes its regulations to match the VA's change could be essentially meaningless at best for companies that bid contracts with agencies other than the VA. That is because those companies, even though they could take advantage theoretically of the VA's changes for VA contracts, would not be able to use those changes when they're bidding contracts with other agencies. And you can't really have two sets of corporate documentation, one for VA contracts, one for non-VA contracts. That means these companies would have to continue to abide by the strict ownership and control requirements, even though they might wish to dial back in accordance with the VA's rules. Now, that's the best case scenario, perhaps. At worst, the VA's change could, if the SBA doesn't take action to match its rules to the VA's, lull SDVOSBs into a false sense of security by inadvertently leading them to believe that the less strict ownership and control requirements under the VA's program will be acceptable government-wide. It's a common misconception of SDVOSBs that a VA verification means that the company is eligible for SDVOSB contracts government-wide. But in fact, that verification applies only again to those VA and FAA contracts. Now, I don't blame the VA for this situation. The VA can't control what the SBA does or does not do, and the VA only has limited control over the perceptions that SDVOSBs may have about what that verification means. But I do hope that the VA and the SBA will work together to ensure that veteran-owned companies aren't caught in the middle between two SDVOSB programs that appear to be diverging from each other more and more.